Let's talk about how to write. I've got my paper, I've got my crayons. Wait a minute. If you're watching this, you're probably relatively new to the world of college writing, and that's perfectly fine. Lots of people come up to me and goes, but I'm not a great writer. But this is the beginning of our process. I don't know, but if your experience is anything like mine, I wrote one paper in high school. So when I came into college, I had to largely figure it out on my own. And you're going to have to do a certain amount of figuring, but don't worry, I'm here to help you. So let's talk about writing. When most people think of writing, there's a few bad misconceptions they might have. Some people think you can just sit down in front of a keyboard, bash keys, and turn out something that's worthwhile. You can't. It requires a little bit more work than that. Although other people will say that it's a pain from beginning to end and the process is misery. That's not really true either. There is a certain amount of work that's involved, but if you follow the procedure, good things can happen. If you follow a good plan and do it thoughtfully, prior preparation and procedure prevents poor performance. In other words, come at stuff with a decent plan, know what you're doing, and the writing process can go a whole lot smoother. The procedure involves, first, reading and studying the assignment sheet, doing research, doing some pre-writing brainstorming, coming up with an argument, doing some more research, a little bit more pre-writing brainstorming, planning, outlining, drafting, revising, editing, and proofreading. Now we're going to go over all these in a certain amount of depth, and there are other videos and some links that will provide you some more feedback and more help. And you can always call and ask me, but let's take these one by one. The first step, as always, is to study the assignment sheet. Now, depending on who your teacher is, you can get some very detailed assignment sheets or some fairly sparse. If you get a decent assignment sheet, and I'm going to use as an example, an essay that I gave my students in the summer of 2023. Remember those days? The essay was basically an attempt to have my students look at writing done by AI and see if it was any good or not, and thus try to get them an idea of what makes a good essay to begin with. Now, a good assignment sheet can be your best friend, and it will do certain things for you. One thing you should definitely look at in any assignment sheet is scheduling, because it helps you with time management and helps you plan out a good process for going. For this particular assignment, we had a pre-writing session, we had a peer review session, we had a submission session. Some people might require proposals, some people might require outlines. The assignment sheets will spell them out. And it's worth spending some time thinking about these deadlines because it helps you arrange your own workflow. Trust me, you don't want to start writing your paper right before you're supposed to have a draft ready for peer review because that's not going to be helpful for anyone. The other thing that you should get from a decent assignment sheet is the assignment requirements. Going back to the evaluation essay, I'm going to blow up a section of it here. And in this essay, I have a top section which covers some discussion questions, things that a successful essay should answer. For this essay, you will answer the question, can the currently available artificial intelligence adequately write college-level essays? And I have some other added questions. And this is ultimately what you need to do to succeed in your essay, is answer some of these questions. I list some sources, and then I talk a little bit more about some skills that will be required for your essay to succeed. And down at the bottom, I have a working thesis statement, something I started to add into my assignment sheets a little while ago. So I'll give you some idea as to the kind of thing that I want. Now, when I design assignments, I try to give these because I figure that the more information I give starting writers, the better of a job they're going to be able to do to meet the requirements. Sometimes, though, you're going to get an assignment sheet that's a little bit more barren, and you might need to bring in some of your own skills to figure out what you need to do. Well, in the summertime, I grade AP essay exams, and most of the essay prompts have this little segment. In your response, you should do the following. Respond to the prompt with a thesis that presents a defensible position. Provide evidence to support your line of reasoning. Line of reasoning means how all your points fit together into a cohesive argument. Explain how the evidence supports your line of reasoning, and use appropriate grammar and punctuation in communicating your argument. At a minimum, all your essays should do this kind of stuff. And I'm imagining that most of the assignments you'll get will be somewhere between the very bare bones one and the very detailed ones I give you. At any rate, even if you got a lot of information, you might still have questions. Please ask your instructors. We want you to succeed, so I'd rather have anyone ask me a question than not. People ask questions, they got a better idea of what they need to do. When you go look at your assignment sheet, one thing to pay particular attention to are action verbs. There are a few different types of action verbs, each of which suggest different things. You can get information-based action verbs, things like define, describe, explain, illustrate. These terms ask you to do specific tasks, mostly to provide more information on your specific argument. Another type of action verb are ones related to relationships, when asking you to relate things to each other, things like compare, contrast, apply, cause, relate. It's about how you connect the different parts of your assignment. And if you see these terms, you'll know that's probably a focus of what the assignment is asking you to do. Then you'll have ones about interpretation, assess, prove, justify, evaluate. These kind of terms will ask you to take the specific information that you're presenting in your argument and do something with it which helps push the state of knowledge into a new area. The more of these action verbs you can identify in the assignment, the more you can get a guided, this is what I need to do, which is what a good assignment sheet should push you towards. The next stage in the process is to do research. Research is tremendously important. In another video, What Makes a Good Essay, you've probably already seen it. I talk a little bit about what I look for in good research, and it's worth reviewing this. If you haven't seen this video yet, search YouTube for DocDuBose034-How. But a few more specific suggestions. Go to the library. Google and other search engines will get you so far, but libraries are geared towards academic research. If you go to the UT library page, one of the links on the main page is LibGuides, right here. And LibGuides will put you towards a specific focused page for specific classes and specific sections. And you notice that at the top of this page, there are any number of different links that provide detailed information on different things, databases, journals versus magazines, citation styles, so on and so forth. If you need more specific information than you're getting off of one of the LibGuides, contact a reference librarian. They love helping you. The one I deal the most with is Elaine Reeves, and her contact information is on this particular LibGuide. There should be a link to the LibGuide somewhere in Blackboard. If not, you can get it through the main UT library webpage, or just ask me. When you do the research, that's going to lead to pre-writing and brainstorming. The idea is you get enough research so you know something about your subject. Then, what do you do with all this information you got? Pre-writing will help you sort out this information and make it more usable for you. It'll give you a chance to have your brain reflect on the information you get. Now, for each of the assignments you're going to be doing in one of my classes, I'm going to have a specific pre-writing process I want you to follow. Each will have its own video. The idea is you need to filter through all your information and become enough of an expert on it to where you can start to stake your claim, make a position that you're going to defend. And in fact, that is the next stage of the process. Come up with an argument. In the What I Look For video that I just mentioned, one of the biggest things I'd say is that argument is at the center of most academic writing. So let's talk a little bit about argument. Again, look at the video for more detail. Now, the example I'm going to give you, I will admit, ain't particularly good, but it will work for our purposes now. It's not a great argument, but it'll allow us to at least talk about the rest of the steps of the process. And that would be the discussion question of, what is the best sandwich? Hey, I did say that this was not the ideal subject. But if you had this as a prompt, an example thesis statement could be, the peanut butter and jelly sandwich is the best sandwich. I mean, look at that one. You come up with some kind of claim after you do research and brainstorming, because that will mean that everything you do from that point is guided towards an actual process, an actual productive process where you're moving towards your final paper. So once you've got your claim, you go back, you do a bit more research, and you go back and you do a bit more pre-writing brainstorming. Where the first batch of this was to make you enough of an expert to make a claim, this batch is to make you enough of an expert to where you can prove your claim, how you can satisfy all the requirements of your claim. And once you've got a lot more information, you start arranging it. You do the planning and the outlining. There are a lot of different ways to do planning and outlining. I tend to default to something that looks pretty much like what you'd expect. 1, 2, 3, 4 with A, B, C, and subpoints from there on therefore. And what I'm looking for in each one of these. Thesis is at the top level. This is the claim you're making. Second level, a bit lower down, broad categories of support for the thesis. And each one of those might have some subcategories. And you do this until you have enough subcategories to where you're presenting points to prove your thesis adequately and accurately. In high school, you've been taught the 5-paragraph essay model. In here, you do as many points as it's required to prove your thesis. This would be an outline for that sample argument we were just talking about, the whole peanut butter and jelly is the best sandwich. The second level of the outline would be broad categories of support. Stuff like PB&J is tasty because of contrasts. It's affordable, it's nutritious, and it's available anywhere. And then you come up with subcategories for each of these. For the tasty because of contrast, you have the contrast between savory and sweet. You have the contrast between the soft, light bread and the dense, moist filling. For affordable, ingredients cost less than a Starbucks coffee. Lower cost than a grilled cheese and soup. Wide choice of ingredients at different price points. For nutritious, bread is high in fiber, and peanuts are a good protein source. For available anywhere, you have ingredients can be found in gas stations. You can eat it in the car. And what this outline does is it pretty much acts as a roadmap for how you're going to write. I kind of connect the dots. You do this point, then you move to this point, then you move to this point, then you move to this point. If you get the organization out as a step before you start the actual typing process, then it takes one less thing off your mind and you can concentrate on the actual paragraphs. And when you have a paragraph by paragraph connect the dots kind of map, it gives you an idea of what kind of length of material you're going to produce. Because each outline point is a paragraph, well, count them up. 9 body paragraphs plus an introduction and a conclusion. That equates to 11 paragraphs. If you have 11 paragraphs worth of material, if each paragraph is about a half page, that means a 5.5 page essay. You get a basic idea of how much material you have and whether you need to add something. And then you can start on the drafting with your fun outlined map in front of you. Now, drafting is the point which is going to take a certain amount of time. To write a draft, 1 paragraph for each lowest level subheading. As I said, outlines help because it gives you that connect the dots map. Make sure each paragraph has a topic sentence which clearly states what role this paragraph is doing in the larger argument. Make sure you, from time to time, refer back to the thesis or to previous arguments. What you want to do is you want to avoid it looking like a bunch of paragraphs that are just nailed together. I hate giving specifics about this, but 1 quotation citation per paragraph is a good general level standard to aim for. If you put in too much more than that, if you've got like 3 citations in a paragraph, there's not really much room for your own stuff now, is there? And if you go a page or 2 without a quotation or a citation, it kind of looks like you're making stuff up. If you end up with a particularly long paragraph, you might want to consider breaking it down into subpoints. Yeah, paragraphs are organizational tools, and you might think you're only doing this one thing in here, but if that ends up being a 1.5 page long paragraph, maybe you can divide it into 2 points. It makes it a bit easier on the reader. In terms of how the paragraphs themselves should look, I got a couple samples for you. I'm not going to read these step by step. I can always send you a screenshot of this, or you can just pause the video. But this is a good model. The stuff in red at the beginning is the topic sentence, which clearly situates what this paragraph is going to do to prove the overall argument that the PB&J is the best sandwich. This is the contrasting elements between savory and sweet. The section in black is spelling out this claim. The section in blue is specific evidence from a reliable outside source. The section in green sums it up. Because you don't want to just leave evidence out there. You want to spell out how it supports your argument. And I provided another paragraph for you which does much the same kind of thing, but this one ends with a good transition sentence which connects it to the point before. If the paragraph before was about the savory sweet thing, this paragraph is about how PB&J's cost less than a medium coffee at Starbucks. And the last paragraph ties those things together. It's one of the ways you help make this unified. And you do this throughout the paper, throughout your argument, going through every outline point until you finish them all. And then you're done, right? Now you got a few more stages, because revision is the next thing. And while you're going to spend a certain amount of time on drafting, revising is where a lot of the real writing happens. Going back and fixing all of the areas. And as a result, revision is one of the most important things you can do. I have a video on it. Just do the search for DocDuBose034 and we'll probably see it later. But here are a few key points for revision. First, ask yourself, did I really prove the original thesis? As you go through a paper, your thoughts develop. Writing is as much, in the drafting process at least, about working out how your argument fits together. And you might get through and find out that, yay, I did everything perfectly. Wonderful. If so, move on. But if you didn't prove the original thesis, you've got a couple options. You can either change the draft to make it fit your original thesis a bit better, or you can go change the original thesis. Just because that PB&J is the best sandwich was the thesis, the argument, the claim you started with, doesn't mean that has to be where it ends. You can revise your argument. If you find that you've made an argument that supports something else better, go for it. The important thing is a cohesive paper that does what it needs to do, not sticking to the original plan. Plans always change and always develop. And in this case, one of the faults with the PB&J is the best sandwich is it's very, very, very broad. Something specific would be a whole lot better. You can always get more specific. Specific is good. Readers can latch onto specifics. A more specific thesis statement could be, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are a good choice for travelers because they are affordable, tasty, and easily portable. It's a more narrow subject, but that means it's going to be easier for us to more fully cover our narrow subject. Broad subjects tend to need broad support. A more specific subject, more focused. Once you revise, you have to edit it. Edit is fixing a lot of the language issues, and I've got a video on that. Do the search for DocDuBose022. After you edit, you have to proofread, and this is to fix the little nitpicky stuff, spelling, grammar, those kind of things. And yes, I have a video on this. Do a search for DocDuBose050. And then you're done, right? Well, in this class, I have you do peer review sessions because I really find it helps if you get different perspectives on your paper. They can point out things that you're not going to see on your own. And if you get a lot more feedback, it allows you to fix a lot of the issues before your instructor sees them. And more feedback means that you can just get your papers a bit better. So you get a feedback from your peers and you use that to revise your paper. Again. And then to edit your paper. Again. And then to proofread your paper. Again. And then finally, you're ready to submit the paper. Now, you might need to revise several times. You might need to edit several times. It's just the process. And we'll talk more about those in their own specific videos. Once you turn in your paper, though, generally, from that point on, you can relax. Unless you want to resubmit it. But that's a matter for the syllabus and for the major assignment sheet. Writing is a skill. The more you do it, the better off you're going to get. And following the procedure is going to help you do it a little bit more smoothly. The more you have a plan, the better things are going to go, generally. There's going to be occasional times where you'll have troubles and you might need to go back. I've had papers where I got halfway through the drafting process, I realized it wasn't working and I had to start again. But the more you stick to the plan, the easier your life is going to be. The major thing I can tell you about writing is I know the temptation to wait as long as possible, but don't. The sooner you start working on your paper, and this involves thinking about it, involves research, and involves notes, the sooner you start these kind of things, the more prepared you're going to be. And the more prepared you are, the better the process is going to go. And if you get to the end of the draft process and you don't like what you did, everything is fixable until you turn it in. And this is another one of the reasons why it's really important to not wait, to get started, to stay on schedule. and I'm here to help you if you need any of that. So I hope things go well for you. Thanks. I'll see you in the next video.